Greetings. This is Dr. Renato Almanzor on the next lecture, Identifying and Managing Strategic Issues for the Strategic Planning and Forecasting course. In this course, what I'm going to do is definitely probably be my last lecture, but with some tips in writing coming out. When we talk about strategic planning, one of the things that we're really striving for is finding strategies that are desirable, viable, and feasible. Desirable in that it's wanted and in some ways needed. Viable in that it actually has some long-term implications. And then feasible in that we actually have the capability to carry this out or achieve this strategy. So now, up to this point, we've talked about a SWOT analysis and being able to identify and cluster some things that might be emerging as strategic priorities. So now the purpose of this phase is just to kind of remind us what we've done. Right, in a lot of ways, what we've done is done our environmental scan, being able to define the issue. You've done now talking about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in your strategy worksheet. And in your personal mission, you identified some values and key things that you're great at. And this is something that you can just as easily do as well with your organization. Be able to say what is the vision and mission of the organization as well as the values, right? And so in this phase, what we're doing then is identifying strategic issues and priorities, and then moving towards articulating required capabilities. And I'm going to talk about the worksheet that I put in the file folder in a moment, and then develop an execution pipeline. So last week we ended with talking about making meaning of some of the data that you've put together. You know, what's the value proposition coming out of the strategic priorities or directions that you've identified, and what are you learning is most important? What are maybe some of the worth costs? What are you learning about worth or costs of these strategic priorities? And to what extent do you think there are some incentives or disincentives that are playing out? I wanted to pause a moment and just say that as we're talking about strategic planning, the old way of thinking about strategic planning is to think that, hey, we do planning and then we do implementation. But really, now there aren't many organizations that I work with that actually go beyond creating a strategic plan or strategic planning direction that go beyond 3 years. It used to be folks would do something like a 5-year strategic plan. Now, most of what I do is actually work with folks to create a 3-year plan with the 3-year budget in place. But even within that, just acknowledging that there's some periodic planning that still happens every year or annually, and there's ongoing decision making all along the way, and there's some execution and learning from it, and then it still leads to continual decision making and continual planning. I wanted to also add a moment to talk about what I think strategic planning is. When my oldest son, I have a 20-year-old and a 7-year-old. The 7-year-old is now getting really good at chess. The 20-year-old was a chess champion at 7 years old. And at that point, he used to beat me pretty regularly, and I was like, gosh, I don't know what's going on. So I went and got a timer so that we could play speed chess, thinking that since I was older and more mature, I could beat him in speed chess. But then after a while, he started beating me quite regularly. And finally, I decided to ask him, Mahal, what do you think is going on? Why do you think you keep beating me pretty regularly? And he said to me, well, you don't think strategically. And that kind of took me back, given that I had a doctorate in organizational psychology, and I thought I was someone who was always thinking strategically. What he said was there are 3 things to thinking strategically, and this is my 7-year-old telling me this at the time, in chess especially. One is you need to think about sequence, leverage, and linkage. Sequence refers to being able to think about what are the first, second, and third steps, and often thinking 4 steps or 4 moves out. But then he also said it's not just about moving pawns out and moving pieces to follow it, but you need to think about what's highest leverage, what are you trying to do? And he said in chess, you're trying to control the center of the board and the spots that can lead to checkmate. So controlling the center of the board is high leverage, and the spots that can take control, that would get you to checkmate. But the other thing you need to think about is linkage. You don't always have to control the center of the board by being in the center of the board. You can control the center of the board from the sides or from the diagonals with the bishop. And knowing that what you do on the right side of the board could be connected to what you do on the left side of the board. So for him and me, for him, it was strategic thinking that was lacking. And similarly, as you enter this strategic planning process and identifying priorities, it's not enough just to identify the priorities. You need to think about to what extent might you need to be aware of the sequence of events that lead you to achieving that particular strategy or goal. What's highest leverage, because you may identify anywhere from 5 to 10 strategies, and really 3 to 5 are really ideal. And then linkage. What else is already going on, not just within your organization, but even in the environment? What might be going on with potential partners or potential funders or potential competitors that you might be able to link onto that will help you achieve your strategies? So I put in your folder, in the file, a capability assessment tool. And this is where you start asking yourself questions like where, when, and how would your strategy be experienced? In other words, if you are working on moving in this direction, selling something new, or creating a whole new structure, or achieving a new program impact, how, where, when would it be experienced? And what are the various ways to get there? So the distribution of your particular strategy, and sometimes it's a program or a portfolio of programs. And from there, you're asking yourself, what are the human, financial, and technological capabilities that are required for creating and delivering on your strategy? And again, it may be you have some people who can do this, but you might actually need to develop other people to do this. What technology do we have? We're really good on having computers, but we don't actually have Salesforce, or we don't do well with Canvas or Moodle or some of these other kinds of technology. So what might we need to develop or acquire? And so it's really important, as you think about the particular strategies that you've identified in emerging priorities, you'll also want to spend some time to think about what is your current capability to execute it and act on it. And as you do that, then you can also think about, if we don't currently have it, how easy might it be to develop it, or what might it cost to actually acquire it? And once you do that, one of the things I like to do is create what I call a pipeline of strategies and execution. So I'll simply do this. I'll draw a matrix that looks like this on the flip chart. I'll write on Post-its those capabilities that I have, or could develop, or might need to acquire, and then place it on my matrix. And then I analyze the distribution and add other things as necessary. And oftentimes what I'll find is I might have come up with all these things that are new, that are really revolutionary. But what I need to do then is be able to identify those things that might already be existing, or people that are already existing. And then I can make incremental changes to moving towards this revolutionary area. Or I might already have some people that are in place, but they don't have any current programming or current skills to get there. So I might need to move this way before I get this way. Another way to think about it, as you did your SWOT analysis, is to be able to place some of the current work or programs. Sometimes in the SWOT analysis, you're going to identify what are the things that you're doing that actually have some impact and some profitability. As you look at the program, so I work in a field of nonprofit organizations, and I work with those who are doing youth programming to homeless, immigration, workforce investment. And some of the things I will do is have them lay out what are the programs, all the things that you're doing, and to what extent are they making high impact based on your mission, as well as profitability. So even in nonprofit organizations, they should be able to say there are some things that are giving them, meeting their financial needs. And as they place their programs, what they learn is that some of these programs aren't giving them much mission impact, and actually they have low profitability. Sometimes they have high mission impact and low profitability, and so that's the heart quadrant. And what you're striving for is, if you have a lot of this, you'll want to at least have some of these, high profitability, low impact, to balance it. But ideally, you're also creating a lot of programs that are high mission impact. So the way to look at it is to work on this matrix overview. And as you place information, so you'll see here, this organization does restoration and reforestation, some environmental education, and these green things are the things that they do to earn revenue. They have an annual event that doesn't have a lot of high mission impact, but it brings in a lot of money. They have major donors. Again, doesn't get to mission impact, but these folks are giving hundreds of thousands of dollars. And they do some rentals. So this environmental education, though, is something that gives them high mission impact and has some degree of profitability, but at least breaks even. But at some point, they may need to decide, hey, this nursery does really not much for our programming, and it doesn't really help us out financially. So this might be something that we actually cease. So that's a way to understand this matrix map. So as you go and do your capability assessment, your next steps on the sheet, the strategy worksheet, is then to kind of be able to say, what are the things that we might want to keep? What are some of the things we might need to develop, and what are the things we might need to get rid of? So just to kind of end, what you're doing in this next couple weeks is that by the end of this week, I'd like you to submit your worksheet with all the tasks completed. Keep in mind that I do expect these to be your rough thinking. It doesn't have to be polished, doesn't have to be perfect. And then in some ways, this last lecture and some other reading, I'm hoping is enough to help you complete the tasks. This weekend, I will post a description of the strategic plan outline. So in many of our conversations, I mentioned how you are no longer expected to write a final paper. Instead, you'll be submitting an outline due May 8th. And then from the strategic worksheets, you should know that I'll be able to give you some ideas on how that strategic plan outline could look, as well as how that video presentation can be uploaded. That will be due May 15th. And I'll post a description of this assignment and some suggestions for formatting by May 1st. For those of you who haven't made a lot of comments in the discussions, I'm still allowing you to do so. Just comments on other people, as well as just comments and responses to the questions themselves. So as usual, if you have any questions or comments, or feel free to email me, and I really appreciate having met with many of you at this point. All right, take care.